Imagine, waking up to find your bank account just emptied, or discovering there's a mortgage taken out in your name on some house you've never even seen.
It's a terrifying thought.
Or maybe it's less dramatic, but still really damaging. Like a collection agency starts calling you about some credit card you absolutely never opened.
Mm-hmm.
Or, even worse, finding out years down the line that someone used your child's social security number, creating this whole tangled mess of debt and bad credit before they even, needed credit.
That child identity theft is a particularly insidious problem.
Right. And this isn't just some movie plot. This is the reality of identity theft and fraud. And, well, it's happening more often, and the financial hits are getting bigger.
Yeah, the latest FTC data is pretty sobering.
Staggering, really. They just put out numbers for 2024. Consumers lost an absolutely eye-watering $12.5 billion to fraud.
$12.5 billion.
And that's a 25% jump in just 1 year. And it's not just the total amount, right? The percentage of people who reported fraud and actually lost money, that also jumped quite a bit. Went from 27% up to 38%.
So more people are not only being targeted, but actually losing funds when they are.
Exactly. And when you hear stats like that, I mean, it's totally understandable to feel a bit exposed, vulnerable. You start thinking about protection.
Of course. It naturally leads you to wonder about solutions.
And that makes those ads, the ones for identity theft protection services, the ones promising they'll shield you, monitor everything, fix it all if the worst happens, they start sounding really, really appealing.
They definitely market that peace of mind aspect very heavily.
But the big question is, are these services like, the big names, Aura, LifeLock, are they actually worth the cost? Which can be pretty significant.
That really is the core question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's one that honestly requires cutting through a lot of marketing noise to get to the practical reality. Yeah. The sources we're looking at for this deep dive articles from solid financial sites like Money, NerdWallet, info from LifeLock itself, a really detailed study from the Consumer Federation of America, that recent FTC data, and also, importantly, some pretty candid feedback from real users on Reddit. They give us a pretty well-rounded view.
Right. Different perspectives.
Exactly. They let us kind of peel back the layers on what these services really offer, where the limitations are, what catches might be lurking in the fine print.
And ultimately help you, the listener, figure out if paying for this kind of thing actually makes sense for your specific situation.
That's the goal.
Absolutely. So our mission here is to pull all this together, the official reports, the expert analysis, and those sometimes messy real-world user experiences to give you the clearest picture possible.
So you can make an informed choice.
Precisely. Okay, let's start unpacking this whole landscape. It's pretty complex.
It is. And maybe the best place to start is just getting the terminology straight. Because even the language can be a bit confusing. We hear identity theft and identity fraud used sometimes, interchangeably.
They sound similar.
They do, but the sources define them with a subtle but kind of important difference. So identity theft is the act itself. Someone stealing and using your personal identifiable information, your PII, without permission, for their gain.
PII, that's like your social security number, address, birthday.
Exactly. Name, address, date of birth, SSN, driver's license, account numbers, passwords, even increasingly things like biometric data. Anything that points to you.
Okay, so theft is the taking of the info with bad intent.
Precisely. And identity fraud is what happens next. It's the actual crime committed using that stolen information. That's the consequence.
Ah, I see.
So it's when the thief uses your stolen details to, say, open new credit cards, take out loans, file fake tax returns to get your refund, get medical services under your name, apply for government benefits.
Or, like you mentioned, use a child's clean SSN to build a whole fake identity.
Exactly. A synthetic identity, they call it, which can be used for all sorts of illicit stuff over years.
And how does this theft actually happen? The sources suggest it's, broader than maybe just thinking about hackers.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
While, yes, the sources definitely talk about sophisticated stuff, hacking big databases, digital forgeries of documents, even the scary rise of deepfakes potentially being used for things like digital banking verification.
Yeah, that's worrying.
It is. But the methods can also be surprisingly low-tech.
Mm-hmm.
Someone literally going through your physical mailbox or dumpster diving, looking through trash for discarded documents that weren't shredded properly.
Wow, people still do that.
Apparently so. What really stands out from the sources, though, is that a lot of victims, when surveyed, actually have no idea how their information got compromised.
Really? They just don't know.
Yeah. Could have been a massive data breach they didn't even hear about, or maybe a phishing email they clicked on years ago, or even info they shared publicly somewhere without thinking. The ways your data can get out there, it's incredibly wide.
And the impact is clearly getting worse. You mentioned that FTC data, that first year-over-year increase in identity theft reports since 2021, that 9% jump nationwide, and it's continuing into early 2025. That feels like a trend going the wrong direction.
It absolutely does. It signals a reversal of what had been a slight downward trend. And looking at where the money losses are happening, that gives us crucial context. The FTC data is very specific.
Okay, where are the biggest losses?
In 2024, the highest reported losses were from investment scams, a staggering $5.7 billion.
Billion with a B.
Billion with a B. And that was up 24% from the year before.
Wow.
Then you have imposter scams, second highest at $2.95 billion lost. And within that category, government imposter scams, people pretending to be from the IRS, Social Security, et cetera, saw a really sharp rise, jumped $171 million to reach $789 million in losses.
That's huge. So we're not just talking about like someone stealing a few $100 on a credit card anymore. These are sophisticated criminals tricking people out of life savings through fake investments or by scaring them into thinking they owe the government money.
Exactly. The scale and sophistication seem to be increasing. The methods are evolving to target much larger sums.
What other areas did the sources highlight?
Well, online shopping issues were reported frequently. That could be anything from not receiving goods you paid for to outright fraudulent charges. And interestingly, business and job opportunity scams saw a big jump in losses, up nearly $250 million to $750.6 million.
Job scams. How do those work?
It seems criminals are really exploiting people's need for work. One statistic from the sources was particularly stark. Reports of job and employment agency-related scams tripled, and the money loss quintupled, soaring from $90 million to $501 million just between 2020 and 2024.
Quintupled. That's incredibly predatory, preying on people looking for work.
It really is. It shows how scammers adapt to current events and economic conditions.
And how are the fraudsters getting paid? And reaching people. Does the data show that?
It does. The FTC found that bank transfers and cryptocurrency payments combined accounted for more reported losses than all other payment methods put together in 2024.
Bank transfers and crypto. Why those?
Often because they're harder to trace and, crucially, harder to reverse or recover once the money is sent.
Okay. And how are they making first contact?
Email's still number one, followed by phone calls and then text messages. So, you need to be vigilant across all those channels. That random email, that unexpected call, that text message could be a scam attempt.
Okay, so this picture emerges. A widespread, evolving threat hitting people hard financially, and that's clearly what fuels this whole market for identity theft protection services.
Absolutely. It creates the demand.
But before we dive into what those services offer, you mentioned an important distinction the sources make, the difference between just basic credit monitoring and this broader identity theft protection.
Yes, this is really key to understanding the value proposition. Credit monitoring is quite focused, quite narrow. It basically tracks activity on your credit reports.
The ones from the big three bureaus.
Yeah.
Equifax, Experian, TransUnion.
Exactly. So credit monitoring alerts you to things like new credit accounts being opened in your name, inquiries into your credit history, like when you apply for a loan, maybe changes in your payment history or big shifts in your debt levels. It's essentially watching your creditworthiness and related activity.
Which is important because often identity fraud does show up first on a credit report.
It often does. But like you said, it's not the whole story of your identity.
Right.
So identity theft protection services, they're marketed as going beyond just that. They promise a much broader scope of monitoring and, importantly, assistance. They claim to cover areas beyond just those 3 credit reports. They pitch themselves as offering the strongest protection by looking in more places and offering more sort of hands-on help if something bad happens.
Okay, broader monitoring and help. But speaking of credit reports, there's something absolutely crucial the sources emphasize about our rights, right?
This is non-negotiable info everyone needs to know. Under federal law, the Fair Credit Reporting Act, or FCRA, every consumer, are legally entitled to get 1 free credit report every 12 months from each of those 3 major bureaus, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion.
1 free, 1 from each every year.
Correct. And the only official Government-authorized website to get these free reports is annualcreditreport.com. That's it. Not some commercial site trying to sell you something, but the official one mandated by law.
Why is that so critical in this context?
Because it means you already have the right and the ability to do basic credit monitoring yourself for free, just by exercising that right.
So if a service is mostly just offering credit monitoring, you need to ask yourself if you're paying for something you can already get for free.
Precisely. It really challenges the baseline value of some of these services, especially the lower tier plans. It shifts the focus to what else they offer beyond that free monitoring and how much you value that extra scope or the convenience or the promised assistance.
Okay, that makes sense. So given that, who are these services actually for? Who might get enough value from those extra features to justify paying, sometimes quite a bit? The sources identified several groups.
Yeah, the sources list about 7 specific categories. First up, people with lots of online and financial accounts.
Okay, why them?
It's pretty straightforward, really. The more accounts you have, email, social media, shopping sites, banks, investments, gaming platforms, subscriptions, whatever, the bigger your digital footprint.
Right.
Each one of those accounts is a potential place where your data could be exposed in a breach. It's a larger attack surface, as they say. More accounts just mean more potential points of compromise.
Makes sense. More doors, more chances someone finds an unlocked one. Who's next?
A group specifically highlighted as being at high risk and, sadly, frequently targeted: elderly Americans.
Yeah, you hear a lot about elder fraud.
The stats are alarming. The sources cite figures like $1.5 billion stolen from over 2.4 million victims, age 60 and over in just 2023 alone.
Wow. Why are they targeted so much?
Well, often it's because they might have accumulated more wealth over their lifetime. Perhaps they're more isolated and sometimes, frankly, less familiar or comfortable with rapidly changing digital technology and scam tactics. The sources even mention services like EverSafe, which are specifically designed for seniors, maybe monitoring financial accounts and alerting designated family members.
That's a really important group to protect. Okay, who else? The sources also mention a group that might surprise people: families with young children.
Yes, this is a really critical and often overlooked risk area. Children are targets because they have what the sources call pliable credit files. Basically, they're clean slates.
Meaning no credit history.
Exactly. So a fraudster can steal a child's social security number, maybe from school forms, medical records, data breaches, and use it to open brand new accounts. And because a child isn't applying for credit, this fraudulent activity can go completely undetected for years.
Until they're like 18 and apply for a student loan or a credit card.
Precisely. And suddenly they find their credit is ruined before they even started. The sources note that households with younger parents and higher incomes, say over $150,000, are seen as being at particular risk for this.
That's terrifying for parents.
It is. And here's a really startling statistic from the sources. 61% of consumers who actually pay for identity protection services don't include their children in the plan, even if child monitoring is offered.
61%. Wow, that seems like a massive blind spot, especially given how long this could fester.
It really is.
Yeah.
This seems like an area where specialized monitoring, like the child SSN monitoring some services offer, could potentially provide real distinct value. LifeLock and Identity Force were mentioned as having strong offerings here.
Okay, families with kids, definitely something to consider. Who else is on the list?
Next up, previous victims of fraud.
Oh, really? If it's happened once.
Unfortunately, yes. If your information has been compromised or used fraudulently before, you are statistically much more likely to be targeted again. The sources say something like 69% of identity theft victims are hit more than once.
Why is that?
Your details might be circulating on lists that criminals trade. Once you're known to be vulnerable or your data is out there, you become a repeat target. Past exposure significantly raises your future risk.
So once you're on the radar, you kind of stay on it. Grim. Okay, who else?
Often, yes. Another group is simply those who don't actively monitor their own credit or financial accounts.
The set it and forget it types.
Kind of. Look, as we discussed, you can do a lot of this monitoring yourself for free. But let's be realistic, right? Regularly checking 3 credit reports, all your bank statements, credit card activity, other online accounts. It takes time. It takes discipline.
Yeah, it can feel like a chore.
It can. So if you genuinely lack the time or feel overwhelmed by it, or just know you probably won't consistently do it yourself, then a service can perform that monitoring function for you and send automated alerts. It offers convenience.
That makes sense as a practical benefit for some people, assuming, of course, the alerts are accurate and timely, which based on that Reddit feedback we'll get to, maybe isn't always guaranteed.
That's a very important caveat, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, next group. Those who specifically want identity theft insurance.
Right, the $1 million protection guarantee you see everywhere.
Exactly. Many services push this hard. They advertise coverage, often up to $1 million, although sometimes it's much less, maybe $20,000 or $25,000. The idea is this insurance helps cover certain out-of-pocket expenses or financial losses if you do become a victim. Things like legal fees, lost wages if you have to take time off work, maybe funds stolen directly from accounts.
So it's a financial safety net.
That's the pitch. For someone who really prioritizes having that potential financial backstop, the insurance component is a major draw.
But you mentioned earlier the sources like the CFA study had some serious questions about that insurance.
They absolutely do. This is a huge area of concern. The CFA study, in particular, pointed to really vague insurance terms and guarantees. What exactly is covered? What's excluded? What's the process for actually filing a claim and getting reimbursed? It's often not clearly spelled out. That advertised $1 million figure might sound great, but in practice, it could be much less valuable than it appears due to all the limitations and hoops you might have to jump through.
Okay, so the insurance might not be as straightforward as the ad suggests. What's the final group the source has identified?
The last one is people whose data might already be out there on the dark web.
The dark web sounds ominous.
It's basically parts of the internet that aren't indexed by regular search engines and require special software to access. Following big data breaches at companies or government agencies, huge lists of stolen credentials, usernames, passwords, personal info, financial data often get bought and sold on these illicit marketplaces or underground forums.
And these services claim they can monitor that.
They do. They claim to scan these hidden parts of the internet for your specific information, email addresses, SSN, account numbers, and alert you if it shows up. This is pitched as monitoring places you, as an average person, can't easily access or watch yourself.
Okay, so they're looking in places I can't. But didn't you say the Reddit users were skeptical about how well that actually works?
They were, and it's a very fair question. Given how the dark web is designed to be hidden, constantly changing, encrypted, users rightly questioned how comprehensive or effective these scans can really be. Like, how can a company guarantee they're finding your info everywhere it might be hiding?
Yeah, that seems difficult to verify.
It is. While the services claim proprietary methods, the actual depth and effectiveness of dark web monitoring is definitely a point of skepticism, both from users and just based on the nature of the dark web itself.
Okay, so those are the potential audiences and the problems these services aim to solve, from broad monitoring to insurance to trying to peek into the dark web. Now, let's really dig into the specifics. What do these services actually offer, feature by feature, and crucially, what do the different sources say about those offerings, especially where the reality might differ from the marketing pitch?
Right. So at their core, these identity theft protection services bundle together several main capabilities. First, as we've touched on, is monitoring.
Going beyond just the credit reports.
Exactly. They claim to monitor a much wider range of databases. Things like public records, or their changes in property titles under your name, or court records appearing, commercial databases that hold marketing data, change of address requests filed with the post office, applications for new utility accounts, and, as we just discussed, attempting to scan those underground websites or forums.
Okay, so a wider net.
A wider net, theoretically. LifeLock, for example, specifically highlights that they monitor for things like home and auto title changes, new utility accounts, payday loan applications, and even attempts to take over your phone number that's called SIM swapping.
Oh, that's interesting. Title monitoring and SIM swapping, those seem pretty specific.
They are. Some niche services, like Bitdefender, are even noted for scanning if your original content is being stolen online, if you happen to be a content creator. So this broader scope of monitoring, looking in these potentially more obscure places, is a key way they differentiate themselves from just basic credit monitoring.
So they're trying to catch fraud in places you probably wouldn't think to look yourself every day. And when they find something potentially suspicious during this monitoring?
Then they issue alerts. That's the notification part. They let you know about activity they've flagged as suspicious or potentially fraudulent.
How do those alerts come? Email? Text?
Typically, email is standard. Some offer notifications through their mobile app or text messages as well. And the speed of these alerts is something certain services really emphasize as a competitive advantage.
Like Aura.
Yeah, Aura and Identity Guard, which are now linked, specifically claim their alerts are faster than many competitors. Aura even claims theirs can be up to 250 times faster in some scenarios. The whole idea is, getting that alert quickly gives you a chance to react faster and hopefully limit the damage.
Speed definitely seems critical if someone's actively trying to open an account or drain your funds. Okay, but what if the worst happens? What if identity theft does occur despite the monitoring? That's where the promise of restoration or assistance comes in, right?
Yes. And this is another really core component, a major part of their value proposition, especially for people who feel like they'd be completely overwhelmed or just wouldn't know where to start dealing with the bureaucratic nightmare that can follow identity theft.
Yeah, I can imagine it's incredibly stressful and time-consuming.
Exactly. So the services promise to help you recover. Now, the level of help can vary quite a bit between different companies and even between different subscription tiers within the same company.
So what does that range look like?
It can range from basically just giving you advice checklists, guidance on the steps you need to take, all the way up to actively working on your behalf. Some services, like ID Shield, which gets highlighted for its restoration capabilities, might assign you a dedicated recovery specialist who will actually make the calls, contact the credit bureaus, creditors, government agencies for you.
Oh, wow. So they might actually do the legwork.
Some claim to, yes. But to do that, they might require you to grant them a limited power of attorney, allowing them to act on your behalf.
Okay, so the promise is they take on the hassle of cleaning up the mess.
That is definitely the promise. However, going back to that CFA study, they raised concerns about how clearly the extent of this assistance is defined. Is it truly comprehensive? What happens if the recovery gets really complicated or there are disputes? The study suggested the marketing materials are often pretty vague on the details, making it hard for you to know exactly what level of help you'll actually get when you desperately need it.
So the promise might be fuzzier than it sounds.
It might be. And it's also worth remembering there are other resources for recovery help nonprofits, like the Identity Theft Resource Center, government sites like identitytheft.gov. The paid services essentially bundle this assistance into their subscription fee.
Okay. And then there's the big one they always advertise, insurance or guarantees. That $1 million protection we keep seeing.
Yes, this is a huge selling point. It's designed purely to give you peace of mind, right? Promising to cover financial losses and related expenses if you become a victim. As we said, the amounts vary, but $1 million is the figure you see plastered everywhere.
But this is where the skepticism from sources like the CFA study and that older analysis by Bruce Schneier really kicks in.
It really does. This is where you need to read the fine print very, very carefully.
Okay, let's dig into that skepticism. It seems to directly challenge the core value. The CFA study sounded particularly critical here.
They were. The CFA study flagged several major issues with these services. First, just unclear disclosures and costs. They found it was often really hard to figure out the full pricing, especially how those tempting introductory offers balloon into much higher renewal rates later on, or even what specific features you were getting at different price points. This lack of transparency makes it tough to compare services apples to apples, or even budget accurately long term.
Yeah, that renewal shock seems like a big complaint later.
It does. Second, they pointed to those vague insurance and guarantees. The study highlighted that the actual terms, conditions, limitations, and crucially exclusions for that $1 million insurance are often buried deep in the fine print, really hard for a typical consumer to find, let alone understand.
What kind of exclusions are we talking about?
Things like what specific types of losses are actually covered. Does it cover money lost to investment scams, which the FTC says is the biggest loss category? Does it cover crypto losses? Are there deductibles you have to pay first? What's the burden of proof required? The CFA's analysis basically suggests these guarantees are often way less comprehensive than that flashy $1 million number makes them seem.
So the $1 million might only apply in very specific, limited circumstances.
Potentially, yes. And the study explicitly called out claims of prevention as being misleading.
They said services can't actually prevent identity theft.
Absolutely. The CFA study stated flat out that marketing claims like stop identity theft before it happens are just false. No service can physically stop a criminal from stealing your information in a data breach or stop them from attempting to use it. They can only monitor for the use of that stolen information after the fact and hopefully alert you quickly and maybe help you clean up the mess. Promoting prevention just sets an unrealistic expectation.
That's a really, really critical distinction. These sound much more like reactive monitoring and response tools, not preventative shields.
Precisely. That's a much more accurate way to think about them. Monitoring and response services.
Okay, what else did the CFA study criticize?
Particularly consumer unfriendly practice they highlighted relates to how some services get your credit reports. Instead of paying the bureaus for bulk access like many businesses do, it seems some services might be requesting your free annual credit reports on your behalf, using your rights under the FCRA.
Wait, what? They use up my free reports that I'm legally entitled to get myself from annualcreditreport.com?
That's exactly what the CFA study suggests might be happening with some providers. They access your reports under your legal right, effectively using up the free ones you could have gotten directly. A source even cited LifeLock's term, saying they will order your annual credit reports, as permitted by the relevant section of the FCRA, which seems to support this concern.
That feels sneaky. You're paying them a subscription fee, and they're potentially using up your own free government-mandated resource.
It definitely raises serious questions about transparency and value, doesn't it? It feels like you're getting a benefit by consuming your free access.
Yeah, that doesn't sit right. What else?
Another practice they criticized was the automatic placement of preemptive fraud alerts. Some services apparently just automatically put a 90-day initial fraud alert on all their customers' credit files, whether they suspect fraud or not.
Why is that bad? Aren't fraud alerts supposed to be good?
They are a useful tool if you suspect identity theft or have been a victim. A fraud alert tells potential creditors they need to take extra steps to verify your identity before issuing new credit. But placing them preemptively on everyone's file can actually backfire. The CFA notes it could cause delays or even denials when you legitimately apply for credit because the lender has to jump through extra hoops and might just decide it's not worth the hassle, especially for things like instant store credit.
So a protection measure meant for victims could actually inconvenience paying customers who aren't victims just because the service blanket applies it.
That's the potential downside the CFA study pointed out.
Okay. And you mentioned Bruce Schneier's older analysis, too. Did it echo these points?
It did, even back in 2008. He questioned the value proposition even then, noting that the process for recovering from identity theft was actually becoming somewhat easier. He was particularly critical of LifeLock's guarantee at that time, suggesting the fine print implied it might only cover losses if they resulted directly from a failure of their service, like they failed to send an alert they should have, rather than covering stuff that might happen anyway, regardless of their monitoring.
Ah, so covering their failure, not necessarily your loss.
That was his interpretation of the fine print back then. He also pointed out that the credit industry itself had historically resisted making fraud alerts permanent for everyone, which is why they're temporary by default, unless you can prove you're a victim and request an extension.
Interesting. So these criticisms about vague guarantees and the nuances of fraud alerts aren't exactly new. They've been debated for a while.
Seems so. Now, beyond the experts in the studies, what about the people actually using these services day to day? That Reddit thread you mentioned sounds like it offered some very direct, unfiltered feedback.
Yeah, sometimes the user comments are where you get the unvarnished truth. What did people say?
It definitely provided a dose of, well, often harsh reality. User feedback on platforms like Reddit tends to be less polished than marketing copy or even professional reviews. Some really common complaints emerged. One big one was poor or useless customer service, specifically when people actually needed help after an identity theft incident.
Oh no, that's exactly when you'd need the most.
Right. The very service they were paying to help them navigate that crisis wasn't providing adequate or helpful support, according to these users. That directly contradicts the whole restoration assistance promise.
That would be incredibly frustrating. You're vulnerable, you're paying for help, and it's just not there.
Exactly. Another really alarming point raised by some Reddit users was instances where the identity protection services themselves got hacked.
Wait, the protection service got breached?
Yes. One user described a really harrowing experience where their Aura account was apparently compromised, potentially exposing all the sensitive PII they'd uploaded: SSNs, birth certificate info, driver's licenses for themselves and their kids.
Oh my God, the irony. The service meant to protect your identity becomes the source of its exposure. That's terrifying.
It completely undermines the trust, doesn't it?
Absolutely. What other complaints came up?
Users also mentioned getting frequent false alerts. Notifications about minor things, inaccurate flags, which leads to alert fatigue. You get so many pointless pings that you start tuning them out, and then you risk missing a real threat when it comes along.
Yeah, the boy who cried wolf effect.
It's exactly. Difficulty canceling the service online was another recurring theme. Users described it as a deliberately anti-consumer practice, forcing you to call in, sit on hold, and then face a hard sell from a retention agent trying to talk you out of leaving.
Ugh, I hate that. Just let me click a button to cancel.
Right. People found it really frustrating. Some also reported technical glitches, like the VPNs included in the service bundle, conflicting with their home network or other software, sometimes making their internet unusable.
Okay, so the bundled tools aren't always seamless.
Apparently not for everyone. And that skepticism about dark web monitoring effectiveness also came up again, with users questioning how reliable or comprehensive it truly is. Plus, there was a definite undercurrent of suspicion among some users that the overwhelmingly positive reviews you sometimes see on comparison websites might be heavily influenced by paid marketing or affiliate deals, given how aggressively these companies advertise.
That's a fair point. The marketing budgets seem huge, so that Reddit feedback is really valuable, isn't it? It shows the potential gap between the glossy ads and the actual day-to-day user experience, especially around support, usability, and just getting straight answers.
It provides a crucial counter-narrative to the marketing spin. Okay, so let's try and bring this together now by focusing specifically on the two big players mentioned most in your sources, Aura and LifeLock. Let's compare what the sources say about them, the good and the bad.
Okay, Aura first. Some sources, like Money Magazine, positioned it as potentially the best identity theft protection overall. What supports that view?
Well, Aura has definitely gained a lot of prominence, and it's noted they joined forces with Identity Guard, another established name. Sources point to several potential positives for Aura. It often gets high marks for its monitoring capabilities and particularly its alert speed. Remember that claim of being up to 250 times faster?
Right. Speed is key.
Speed is key. Another major pro, consistently noted, is that Aura bundles a pretty robust suite of digital security tools: antivirus, a VPN, password manager, safe browsing tools, and importantly, includes these on all its plan levels, not just the top tier.
Oh, that's good. So you get the whole package regardless of price point.
That seems to be their model, yes, which offers broader digital protection beyond just identity monitoring.
Yeah.
Money's January 2024 review specifically rated Aura best overall, and interestingly, rated Identity Guard, its partner, as the best budget option, suggesting they might still maintain slightly different pricing or feature sets.
Okay, so Aura comes across as a strong all-around package, especially if you want those bundled security tools. What about the downsides mentioned in the sources?
Well, according to the sources, Aura can be more expensive than some of its competitors, especially as you go up the plan tiers, like couple or family plans. There were some reports indicating certain plans might only include one annual credit report, which, as we discussed, is a practice that raises eyebrows given your right to free reports.
Yeah, that's not great.
There can also apparently be limitations on which features work on which platforms, like maybe something works on desktop but not the mobile app, or vice versa. And of course, that Reddit feedback, while not always specific to Aura, included those general complaints about account hacking. One user did specifically name Aura, false alerts, potentially subpar customer service when needed, and those cancellation hassles. So potential friction points in the user experience, despite the advertised strengths.
Got it. And what about Aura's pricing? The sources gave some examples, but there seem to be discrepancies.
They did, and yes, pricing can be confusing and change frequently. The Money source gave monthly versus annual examples. An individual plan at 15-month paid monthly, dropping to 12-month if paid annually, $144 a year. A couple plan was $29 monthly versus $22 annually. A family plan, up to 5 adults plus kids, was $50 monthly versus $32 annually. A kids-only plan was $13 monthly versus $10 annually. One Reddit user mentioned paying $50 a month after a trial, feeling it was okay at 50 cents a day.
Okay, so there are different tiers.
Right. However, that other source, the January 2024 Identity Guard one, gave price ranges, suggesting individual plans started around $7.50, $19.99 a month for the first year, and family plans $18.49, $38.99 a month for the first year, but specifically noted prices rise significantly after that first year, potentially up to $66.66 for the family plan.
Ah, so that introductory pricing versus the much higher renewal cost is key with Aura, too.
It seems to be a common industry tactic. Always check the renewal price,
Right.
not just a tempting first-year offer.
Good advice. Okay, now let's switch to LifeLock. Money highlighted this one as potentially the best identity theft protection for children. It's definitely a well-known brand, part of Norton now.
Yes, LifeLock has been around a long time, high brand recognition. And being part of Norton LifeLock is a key point. It means good integration with Norton's popular cybersecurity products like Norton 360.
What are LifeLock's main strengths, according to the sources?
Well, that established brand reputation counts for something for many consumers. Like Aura, it offers good integration with security tools when bundled into Norton 360 plans, antivirus, VPN, etc. LifeLock's dedicated kids plan gets specifically called out as being relatively affordable. Especially in the first year, one source mentioned $5.99 per child initially, which can look attractive compared to family plans that charge a lot more for adding kids.
Okay, a potentially cheaper way to cover kids specifically.
Potentially. And LifeLock also boasts some genuinely unique monitoring features that aren't standard everywhere. We mentioned them earlier. Monitoring for changes in home and auto titles, new utility account applications, payday loans, and those phone takeover or SIM swap attempts.
Right, those seem different.
For the kids plan, they specifically mention monitoring the child's SSN, scanning file sharing networks for their info, and adding specific insurance coverage for the enrolled kids. NerdWallet also noted LifeLock has a decent plan structure for couples, 2 adults.
So LifeLock's got those unique monitoring angles and a clear focus on children, leveraging the Norton connection. What about its weaknesses or criticisms?
A significant drawback mentioned is that the LifeLock child plan usually requires an existing adult membership. You can't just buy protection for your child alone. An adult in the household needs a main LifeLock plan first.
Ah, okay, so it's an add-on, not standalone.
Typically, yes. But the most significant criticism, the one really hammered home in the money source, is the absolutely dramatic increase in plan prices upon renewal after the first year.
You mentioned this earlier. The examples were pretty stark.
They really are. Money showed the standard individual plan jumping from about $90 for the first year to nearly $125 per year after renewal. Okay, that's a jump. But the Ultimate Plus plan for 2 adults, that goes from around $396 for the first year to almost $680 per year upon renewal.
Wow, it's nearly double, $680 a year. That completely changes the long-term value calculation, doesn't it? It makes that initial price feel almost like a trick.
It certainly makes the introductory rate look like a loss leader, designed to get you in the door before the real cost hits. This practice aligns perfectly with the CFA's general criticism about unclear costs and potentially misleading introductory pricing across the industry.
Yeah, that's a huge red flag for consumers.
Definitely. LifeLock also carries some of that historical baggage regarding the scope of its guarantee, like Schneier pointed out years ago, and those general concerns about preemptive fraud alerts, though the CFA study applied that more broadly. And, just like Aura, LifeLock wasn't immune to the general complaints on Reddit regarding customer service issues, difficulties canceling, and potential software conflicts.
Okay, so if we compare Aura and LifeLock head-to-head, based on what the sources tell us, how do they stack up, acknowledging all the pros and cons?
Well, they're clearly both major players, but they seem to have slightly different focuses and strengths, maybe appealing to slightly different priorities. Aura is often presented as having potentially faster alerts and really emphasizes that comprehensive bundle of general digital security tools included across all its plans.
So speed and the all-in-one security suite seem like Aura's angle.
Kind of, yeah. LifeLock, on the other hand, stands out for those unique, non-credit-focused monitoring features, the title monitoring, utility accounts, SIM swapping, and has that very specific plan structure and marketing push targeting families concerned about child protection, leveraging the well-known Norton security brand.
Okay, so LifeLock has unique monitoring niches and a strong child-family focus.
Exactly. However, they both share those significant common criticisms that came up in the sources and user feedback. Concerns about the actual quality and responsiveness of customer service when things go wrong, lack of clarity and potential limitations in their guarantees and insurance coverage, those potentially frustrating cancellation processes, and lingering questions about the real effectiveness of things like dark web monitoring.
And pricing.
The pricing structures are different, but both clearly involve substantial costs, especially for families or higher tiers. And LifeLock's particularly steep renewal price hike is a major factor that the sources really highlighted as something consumers absolutely need to be aware of up front.
Okay, so we've looked at the threat, who might be most vulnerable, what the services offer, the tools they include, but also the significant criticisms, limitations, and costs raised by experts and real users. Given all that, especially the cost and the fact that they can't prevent theft, this brings us back to a really fundamental question. What can people actually do themselves, potentially for free or at least low cost, to protect against identity theft and fraud?
This is absolutely essential to cover.
Yeah.
Because, as the sources just kept underscoring, no paid service is a magic bullet. No subscription can guarantee prevention. Many of the most crucial, most effective steps are things individuals can and absolutely should take themselves, and many of them cost nothing at all.
Like what the CFA study had a list, didn't it?
They did, a very practical one there, 10 easy steps to protect your identity. We should definitely walk through some of the key ones the sources recommend.
Yeah, let's do that. What are some actionable steps people can take right now?
Okay, first, practice good mail security. Simple stuff. Don't leave sensitive mail sitting in your unlocked mailbox for hours or days. Consider taking outgoing mail, especially bill payments, directly to a secure public mailbox or the post office, rather than just leaving it in your home box with the flag up. If you go on vacation, have the post office hold your mail. This helps thwart low-tech mail theft.
Makes sense. Protect the physical mail.
Second, guard your social security number like gold. Seriously, treat it with extreme caution. Do not carry your social security card in your wallet. Don't carry other documents that have the full number on them if you can avoid it. Only give out your SSN when there is a clear, legitimate, necessary reason and you trust the entity asking for it. Always ask if you could use an alternative identifier instead.
Right. That number is the master key, basically. Protect it.
Absolutely. Third, lock up or shred sensitive documents. Don't just toss old bank statements, credit card offers, medical bills, expired IDs, or anything with personal info into the regular trash or recycling. Keep important documents secure while you need them, and use a good crosscut shredder to destroy them when you don't need them anymore. Don't make it easy for dumpster divers.
Okay, shredding is important. What else?
Fourth, you can easily stop most of those pre-screened credit card and insurance offers that flood your mailbox. You can opt out for 5 years by calling a toll-free number 1-888-567-8688, or you can opt out permanently online at optoutprescreen.com.
Oh, I get tons of those. You can stop them.
You can. Now, you do need to provide some personal info, including your SSN, to the credit bureaus through this official channel to process the opt-out. But doing so stops those pre-approved offers from sitting in your mailbox where a thief could potentially intercept them and try to activate them.
Okay, that's a good practical tip. Number 5.
Fifth, keep private information private. Seems obvious, but be incredibly wary of unsolicited calls, emails, or texts asking for personal details like account numbers, your SSN, passwords, mother's maiden name, etc. Legitimate companies you already do business with usually won't just randomly ask for sensitive info like that out of the blue. Don't share your PINs or passwords with anyone. Use strong, unique passwords.
So basically, practice good skepticism and protect your credentials. Common sense, but crucial.
Exactly. Sixth, practice basic online safety. Make sure your computers and mobile devices have reputable antivirus and firewall software installed, and crucially, keep it updated. Only enter sensitive information like credit card numbers on websites that use secure connections. Look for the HTTPS in the web address and the little padlock symbol in your browser. Keep your operating system and all your software patched and updated, as updates often fix security holes.
Digital hygiene, basically. Keep your systems clean and be careful where you click.
Precisely. Seventh, check your bills and bank statements promptly and regularly. Don't just file them away. Actually look at every transaction listed on your bank accounts, credit cards, investment accounts. This is your first line of defense for spotting unauthorized charges or activity on accounts you already have. No service can replace you actually looking at where your money is going.
That seems like a really fundamental step. You have to watch your own accounts.
Absolutely. Eighth, and we really can't stress this enough, check your credit reports regularly. Remember, you get those 3 free reports every single year from annualcreditreport.com. The smartest way to use them is to stagger them.
Stagger them.
Instead of getting all 3 at once, request one from Equifax now. Then 4 months later, get your report from Experian. Then 4 months after that, get the one from TransUnion. If you do that, you're effectively monitoring one of your major credit reports roughly every 4 months, all year round, completely for free.
Oh, that's clever. Free rolling monitoring.
Exactly. Ninth, pay attention to privacy notices that companies send you. Yes, they're often dense and full of legalese, but they do contain important information about how your data is being collected, used, shared, and what rights you have to control it. And 10th, pay attention to debt collectors. If you suddenly start getting calls or letters about debts you absolutely do not recognize, don't just ignore them. That's a very common red flag signaling identity theft. Ask the collector for written validation of the debt and dispute it formally in writing if it's not yours.
Okay, those 10 steps from the CFA are incredibly practical. Seems like things most people can do. And beyond those daily habits, you mentioned earlier that consumers have specific rights and tools they can use themselves, like fraud alerts and security freezes.
Yes, and these are really powerful tools. They came up frequently in that Reddit thread discussion, with users praising them as highly effective measures you can take on your own for free. Besides, disputing errors you find on your credit reports directly with the bureaus, you can place a fraud alert on your credit file.
What does a fraud alert do exactly?
An initial fraud alert is free. It lasts for 1 year now. Used to be 90 days. And it basically puts a flag on your credit file telling businesses they should take extra steps, reasonable policies and procedures to verify your identity before granting any new credit in your name.
Yeah.
If you've actually been a victim of identity theft and have a police report or an FTC identity theft report, you can request an extended fraud alert, which lasts for 7 years and requires creditors to actually contact you directly using contact info you provide before they can issue new credit.
Okay, so a fraud alert adds a layer of verification, makes it harder for someone else to open credit in your name.
Exactly. It adds friction. You only need to contact one of the 3 major bureaus, Equifax, Experian, or TransUnion, to place a fraud alert. They're required by law to notify the other 2.
And you said there's something even stronger, a security freeze.
Yes, a security freeze, which is often called a credit freeze. This is arguably one of the single most effective preventative measures you can take against new account fraud. And importantly, under federal law, placing, temporarily lifting, and permanently removing a credit freeze is completely free for consumers with all 3 major credit bureaus.
Free. How does it work?
A security freeze essentially locks down access to your credit report entirely. Potential creditors simply cannot access your report to check your creditworthiness if it's frozen. So if an identity thief tries to open a new credit card or loan in your name, the lender gets blocked when they try to pull your credit report, and they generally won't be able to approve the application.
Wow, so it just stops them cold from opening new accounts.
For the most part, yes. For credit accounts that require pulling your report, you, the consumer, are in control. You can freeze your reports with each of the 3 bureaus. You have to do it with each one separately. Then, if you need to apply for credit yourself, you just temporarily thaw or lift the freeze for a specific period or for a specific creditor using a PIN or password they provide you. Once your application is processed, you can refreeze it.
So instead of paying a service hundreds of dollars a year to monitor for potentially fraudulent new accounts after your data might have been stolen, you can proactively freeze your credit files for free, making it basically impossible for someone else to open most new credit accounts in your name in the first place.
That's exactly the logic. Many security experts, and certainly many users on that Reddit thread, pointed to credit freezes as a superior, free, and highly effective way to prevent new account fraud, putting the control squarely in your hands, not a third-party services.
That sounds like a much more direct form of actual prevention, at least for new account fraud, compared to just monitoring and reacting. That's a game changer.
It really is a powerful tool that everyone should know about and consider using.
Okay. What about help if you do become a victim? Are there free resources for that too, besides the paid services restoration assistance?
Absolutely. The sources mention several invaluable free resources. The FTC's website, ftc.gov, and their hotline are primary sources for information on all kinds of scams and identity theft prevention tips. Then there's identitytheft.gov. This is the official U.S. government website run by the FTC specifically for reporting identity theft and getting a personalized recovery plan. Filing a report there is crucial because it generates an official FTC identity theft report, which is really important documentation you'll need when dealing with credit bureaus, debt collectors, and sometimes even law enforcement.
So identitytheft.gov is the place to go to start the official recovery process.
Yes. There's also reportfraud.ftc.gov, another FTC site where you can report various types of fraud, even if it didn't involve identity theft, and get advice on next steps. And beyond the government, there are excellent nonprofit organizations like the Privacy Rights Clearinghouse and the Identity Theft Resource Center, ITRC. They offer free guidance, support, and assistance specifically for victims of identity theft.
It really seems like there are a lot of powerful, free tools and resources available if people are willing to be proactive and know where to look.
There really are. Education and taking those proactive steps yourself can go an incredibly long way.
Okay. This brings us full circle back to our original question, but now armed with all this context from the sources, are these identity theft protection services like Aura and LifeLock actually worth the money?
Well, based on this deep dive into the sources, it's clear identity theft and fraud are absolutely real. They're growing problems. They have devastating financial consequences. Services like Aura and LifeLock do offer a package deal. They provide monitoring that goes beyond basic credit checks, looking into public records, utility databases, maybe trying to scan parts of the web you can't easily reach. They offer convenience. They promise varying levels of help if the worst happens. And they include some form of identity theft insurance.
So there are tangible offerings.
There are. And for certain people, maybe those identified as higher risk, like the elderly, or families really worried about child ID theft, or people with a huge online presence, or past victims, or maybe just for individuals who highly value the convenience of automated monitoring across many data points and want the reassurance of having a recovery specialist potentially available. For those people, these services might offer a layer of perceived value or peace of mind that feels worth the cost to them.
However, and it feels like a big however based on our discussion, the sources also present a really strong case for significant skepticism, highlighting substantial limitations and costs.
Absolutely. The price point alone is a major factor, especially when you factor in those huge renewal hikes that aren't always obvious up front, like we saw clearly with LifeLock. The CFA study and all that user feedback raise really serious questions about how clear and truly valuable the promised insurance and guarantees actually are in practice. They call out the misleading nature of any prevention claims. They point to potentially questionable practices like using up your free credit reports.
And the user experiences.
Right. Those user experiences highlight potentially significant issues with getting effective customer service when you actually need it most. They raise the terrifying possibility of the protection services themselves being breached. They mention the annoyance of false alerts causing fatigue and those frustrating cancellation hoops.
And critically, as we just discussed, many of the most powerful steps for actual prevention and detection, getting your free credit reports regularly, staggering them, placing free fraud alerts, or even better, free security freezes, shredding documents, using strong passwords, being vigilant online. These are all things individuals can and probably should be doing themselves, often for zero cost.
This really is the core trade-off, isn't it? You can pay a substantial, often recurring fee for a service that bundles broad monitoring, convenience, recovery assistance with caveats, and insurance with caveats. But that service comes with documented limitations, potential frustrations, unclear terms, rising costs, and importantly, it cannot prevent identity theft from happening.
Yeah.
Or you can choose to take proactive control yourself, use the free government and nonprofit resources, exercise your rights under the law, like getting your free credit reports, and implement powerful free tools like credit freezes, which offer direct effective prevention against the most common type of identity fraud, new account opening.
So the worth isn't a simple yes or no. It's not universal. It's deeply personal.
It absolutely is. It depends entirely on your individual assessment of your own risk level. It depends on your budget. It depends on how much you personally value the convenience factor versus your willingness to invest your own time and effort. It depends on which aspects you prioritize, the monitoring breadth, the potential recovery help, the potentially limited insurance. You need to weigh the costs against the realistic benefits and limitations highlighted by these sources. These services are not an essential shield you must have. They are an optional, expensive layer of protection that supplements, but absolutely does not replace, fundamental personal security practices and ongoing vigilance. The promise is peace of mind and support, but the reality, based on everything we've seen, involves navigating complexity, potential frustrations, and recognizing that your ultimate security still rests heavily on your own actions.
That provides a much clearer, much more nuanced framework for actually evaluating these services. And, considering the FTC's point that scammers' tactics are constantly evolving and we're seeing increasingly sophisticated digital methods like deepfakes emerging, this whole deep dive kind of leaves us with a key question to ponder, doesn't it?
What's that?
In this landscape of rapidly changing digital threats, where criminals are always finding new angles, how much protection can any fixed set of monitoring services realistically provide compared to the essential, ongoing, and adaptable task of our own digital vigilance and personal data hygiene?
That's a profound question. And maybe building on that, if even the guardians, the very services designed to protect our digital identity, aren't entirely invulnerable or free from flaws themselves, where does our ultimate responsibility for our own protection truly lie? And what does genuine digital security even look like in the 21st century? Definitely something significant for all of us to think about as we navigate our increasingly digital lives.